Hey there, welcome back. Or maybe you're just drifting in for the first time. Either way, grab your blanket, turn down the brightness, and let's sink together into the ancient soup of stories known as Greek mythology. Tonight, we're going all the way back. Before Zeus, before Hera, before anyone had the bright idea to turn into a swan and seduce people. We're talking about the beginning of everything, when the universe was basically a cosmic mess with feelings. So let's dim the torchlight, settle into our marble recliners, and begin where the Greeks said it all started. Chaos, the universe, but make it emotionally unstable. In the beginning, there was chaos. Not chaos like your kitchen after trying to cook past midnight. This chaos was more like a vast gaping void, a yawning emptiness that somehow decided to become self-aware. From chaos came Gaia, the Earth. She's basically the original overachiever. She just popped into existence out of the void, looked around and went, well, someone's got to make something solid around here. And so she did. Gaia gave birth to Uranus, the sky, because apparently her idea of romance was producing her own boyfriend. Then, of course, they fell in love, because mythology never misses a chance for things to get weirdly self-referential. From their union came the Titans, the Cyclopes, and the 100-handed ones, which sounds like the lineup of a very questionable rock band. But things didn't stay romantic for long. Uranus, for all his sky god potential, turned out to be the ancient Greek version of a controlling partner. He wasn't exactly thrilled with some of Gaia's other children, especially the ones with, too many hands. So he stuffed them back inside her. That's right. He literally shoved them back into the womb of the earth. And Gaia, understandably, did not love that. So, she started plotting. Cronus, the Titan who castrated his dad and thought that'd fix everything. Now Gaia had a bunch of Titan sons, and she gathered them up like, hey kids, your dad's a bit of a problem. Who's up for overthrowing him? All the Titans were like, that sounds dangerous. Except Cronus, who basically said, fine, I'll do it. I'm bored anyway. So Gaia crafted a sickle made of adamantine, which is Greek for, this is about to get mythologically violent, and Cronus waited until Uranus came down for his nightly visit. Then, snip, Cronus castrated his father and threw the evidence into the sea. And from that oceanic disaster came Aphrodite, the goddess of love, because apparently that's how beauty is born in Greek cosmology, through intergenerational trauma and saltwater Uranus. Meanwhile, screamed curses into the sky and declared that Cronus and his children would face retribution someday, which in mythology is basically a guaranteed prophecy. Cronus's golden age, a short-lived piece after that dramatic family therapy session, Cronus took over as king of everything. And for a little while, it actually went okay. The world entered what poets later called the Golden Age, a time of peace, abundance, and apparently zero taxes. People didn't age, there were no wars, and everything just worked, which in mythology is usually a sign that it's all about to go horribly wrong. You see, Cronus had heard a prophecy that one of his children would overthrow him, just like he overthrew his father. And since Greek mythology operates entirely on the principle of, if it worked once, do it again but worse, Cronus decided to, eat his children, one by one. Every time Rhea, his wife, gave birth, Cronus would just scoop up the baby and swallow it whole. No chewing, no seasoning. Straight down the divine gullet. Rhea was understandably not thrilled with this parenting style. Rhea outsmarts the baby-eating Titan. By the time Rhea was pregnant with her 6th child, she'd had enough. So she pulled a fast one. When the baby was born, she handed Cronus a rock wrapped in swaddling cloth and said, "Here, honey, it's your favorite meal." Cronus, apparently too lazy to check, just gulped it down. And Rhea whisked away the real baby, Zeus, to a cave on the island of Crete, where he was raised by nymphs, goats, and probably some very confused shepherds. It's said that the nymphs clanged shields and spears together whenever baby Zeus cried, to hide the noise from Cronus, which is basically ancient noise-canceling technology powered by anxiety. And so, Zeus grew up strong, confident, and just arrogant enough to fulfill the prophecy. The Titanomachy, family therapy. But with lightning bolts once, Zeus reached adulthood. He did what any ambitious mythological son would do. Plotted revenge. He teamed up with his grandmother Gaia, who was always ready for another coup, and tricked Cronus into drinking a potion that made him vomit up all his swallowed children. So, out came Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, all fully grown and understandably furious about having spent their early years in digestive limbo. Together, they declared war on the Titans. For 10 years, they fought the Titanomachy, which sounds like an energy drink, but was actually one of mythology's biggest wars. Zeus led the charge with his new thunderbolts, forged by the Cyclopes. Poseidon took the seas, Hades ruled the shadows, and the Titans, led by Cronus, held Mount Olympus. Eventually, Zeus and his siblings won. They cast the Titans into Tartarus, a gloomy abyss even deeper than the underworld. And just like that, the age of the Titans ended, replaced by the Olympian gods. You know, the ones who'd spend the next several millennia turning into animals and ruining mortal lives for fun. The Olympian setup. Divine dysfunction. Now in HD, with the Titans out of the picture, Zeus and his siblings divided the world. Zeus got the sky, Poseidon got the sea, and Hades got the underworld. Poor Hestia, goddess of the hearth, got the kitchen. Hera became queen of the gods and Zeus's wife, though calling that relationship stable would be like calling the Trojan War a friendly disagreement. Zeus then set up Mount Olympus as divine headquarters. It was said to be a place where the air was so pure that mortals couldn't even breathe it. Basically the ancient equivalent of an exclusive VIP lounge. There, the gods lived, feasted, argued, and meddled endlessly in human affairs. Because what's the point of being immortal if you can't ruin someone's life from time to time? Prometheus, the guy who gave us fire and regretted everything. Now that the Olympians were in charge, things were looking good. Until someone decided to help humans. That someone was Prometheus, a titan who somehow escaped Zeus's punishment. He looked at humanity, small, cold, and mostly confused, and thought, you know what they need? Fire. So he stole it from the gods and gave it to humans. Zeus, of course, was not amused. For his troubles, Prometheus was chained to a rock, where an eagle came every day to eat his liver. It grew back every night, and the process repeated endlessly. It's basically the first recorded example of workplace retaliation in history. And as if that weren't enough, Zeus decided to punish humanity too. So he ordered Hephaestus to craft a woman named Pandora, who was beautiful, curious, and came with a mysterious box. She opened it, because of course she did, and out flew all the evils of the world. Disease, misery, death, taxes, probably. What remained inside? Hope, which the Greeks thought was either a comfort or the cruelest illusion. Classic Greek ambiguity, Zeus the player, divine affairs and other bad ideas now. If you've ever read Greek myths, you know that Zeus had the self-control of a toddler in a candy store. He fell for mortals, nymphs, goddesses, basically anything that moved, and each time, he came up with increasingly ridiculous disguises. Once, he turned into a swan to seduce Leda. Another time, a bull to carry off Europa. And once, a literal golden shower to visit Danae. Which, yes, the ancient Greeks meant exactly what that sounds like. Each affair created new demigods, heroes and disasters, all of whom would later star in their own tragic spin-offs. Meanwhile, Hera spent most of eternity trying and failing to keep him in line. She couldn't really divorce him, divine politics and all. So she settled for tormenting his lovers and their children. Which sounds petty, but to be fair, she had centuries of material to work with. So, we've reached the part of Greek mythology that people usually imagine when they think of the gods. You know, Mount Olympus gleaming in the sunlight, gods sipping nectar, lounging around in togas, judging mortals, and occasionally transforming into barnyard animals for romance purposes. But beneath that polished marble aesthetic, it was basically a never-ending mix of gossip, jealousy, and passive-aggressive lightning bolts. Zeus and Hera, the original power couple with a PR problem. Let's start with the top of the divine pyramid, Zeus and Hera. In theory, They ruled as equals, king and queen of heaven. In practice, it was complicated. Zeus, as we know, had an attention span shorter than an Athenian election cycle. He couldn't resist a pretty face, mortal or divine. Hera, meanwhile, was the goddess of marriage, which is both ironic and deeply unfortunate for her. Their relationship was one long cycle of betrayal, fury, and divine cold wars. Whenever Zeus strayed, Hera found out, which was basically every week. And she would take it out not on him, because he was king and full of thunderbolts, but on whoever the unlucky third party happened to be. For example, Io, a priestess of Hera, caught Zeus's eye. So Zeus turned her into a cow to hide her. Hera saw through it immediately and demanded the cow as a gift. She then set a giant, 100-eyed guard named Argus to watch Io forever. Zeus eventually sent Hermes to rescue her, but not before Hera sent a gadfly to sting Io endlessly as she wandered the earth. Moral of the story: being Zeus's type was hazardous to your health. Then there was Semele, a mortal woman who became pregnant with Zeus's child Dionysus. Hera disguised herself as a kind old lady, convinced Semele to ask Zeus to reveal his true form, and when Zeus did, Semele instantly vaporized. Because apparently, seeing a god unfiltered is not great for your lifespan. And that's just the first two scandals. Hera's revenge streak became legendary, but honestly, it wasn't just jealousy. The ancient Greeks actually admired her. She represented dignity and endurance, which is a poetic way of saying she stayed mad, but elegant about it. Poseidon, ocean drama, saltwater edition while Zeus ruled the skies. Poseidon took the sea, and all the unpredictable mood swings that came with it. Poseidon was the god of the ocean, earthquakes and horses, because apparently those three things are connected somehow. The Greeks figured they all move unpredictably and destroy stuff, and just rolled with it. Poseidon wasn't exactly chill. He had the temper of a stormy coastline and a long list of grudges. He once tried to overthrow Zeus along with Hera and Athena, the first recorded workplace coup in divine history. When it failed, Zeus punished him by making him build the walls of Troy, which, to be fair, turned out to be a pretty solid wall. Until a wooden horse showed up. Poseidon also had his own complicated love life. Let's just say consent wasn't really his strong suit, and his relationships often resulted in terrifying sea creatures, winged horses, or cursed offspring. His most famous child was Theseus, hero of Athens, but Poseidon also fathered Polyphemus, the Cyclops who later tried to eat Odysseus. So, a mixed record there. When Poseidon wasn't seducing or storming, he was picking fights, with mortals, gods, and even cities. He once competed with Athena for control of Athens. Poseidon offered the people a saltwater spring, not his best idea, while Athena gave them the olive tree. The Athenians chose her, obviously, and Poseidon has been holding that grudge for eternity. Hades, the awkward introvert of the underworld now. Let's sink a little deeper, literally. Below the earth lies Hades, lord of the underworld. Unlike his brothers, Hades didn't meddle much. He preferred peace, routine, and probably didn't love social events. Which is fair. When you manage a realm of endless souls, you learn to appreciate quiet. The underworld wasn't quite the fiery hell modern culture imagines. It was more like an endless gray bureaucracy of afterlife sorting. Everyone went there eventually. Heroes, villains, and regular people. The good got Elysium, basically divine retirement, and the bad got Tartarus, divine jail. Hades wasn't evil, just extremely efficient. But he did have one scandal. Persephone. He fell in love with her, abducted her, as one does apparently in Greek myth, and made her queen of the underworld. Her mother, Demeter, goddess of harvest, went into full depression mode and stopped growing crops until Zeus intervened. Eventually, a compromise was reached. Persephone would spend part of the year with Hades and part above ground with her mother. And thus, the Greeks explained the seasons. When Persephone's home, spring and summer bloom. When she's gone, everything dies. So yes, the Greeks believed winter was caused by a mother grieving her daughter's yearly underworld visit, which is both poetic and mildly emotionally manipulative. Athena, the brainiac in the family, Let's float up now to the shining figure of Athena, goddess of wisdom, strategy, and occasional snark. Unlike most gods, she wasn't born the usual way. Zeus had swallowed her pregnant mother, Metis, because a prophecy said their child would surpass him. But one day Zeus got a splitting headache, and out popped Athena, fully grown, wearing armor, shouting a battle cry. That's one way to enter the world. Athena was smart, composed, and famously not into romance. She stayed perpetually single, preferring books, battle plans, and mentoring heroes. She was basically the ancient Greek version of not interested. Thanks. She helped Odysseus with his clever tricks, guided Perseus against Medusa, and gave Jason the idea for his ship, the Argo. But she also had a bit of a competitive streak. One mortal woman, Arachne, claimed she could weave better than Athena. Athena challenged her to a contest. And when Arachne's tapestry turned out flawless, but too honest about the gods' bad behavior, Athena snapped and turned her into a spider. So yes, that's why we have spiders. Revenge, art, Manardao, and Apollo, the beautiful disaster. Then there's Apollo, god of light, music, poetry, medicine, and just general overachievement. He was handsome, talented, and had a level of confidence that would make influencers blush. But his love life? A complete mess. He fell for the nymph Daphne, who wasn't interested. So she prayed to her father, a river god, and he turned her into a laurel tree. Apollo, undeterred, made the laurel his sacred symbol and started wearing leaves like it was a fashion statement. He also loved Cassandra, the Trojan princess. He gave her the gift of prophecy, but when she refused him romantically, he cursed her so that no one would ever believe her predictions, which is a textbook example of divine pettiness. Apollo's twin sister, Artemis, goddess of the hunt, was his exact opposite, reclusive, wild, and protective of her independence. She spent her time in forests with her nymphs, occasionally turning people into deer if they looked at her the wrong way. Literally. One guy, Actaeon, accidentally saw her bathing, and she turned him into a stag. His own dogs then tore him apart. So, respect people's boundaries. Aphrodite, love, beauty, and maximum chaos now. If Athena was the goddess of logic, Aphrodite was the goddess of chaos disguised as romance. Born from the foam of Uranus's severed bits. You remember that from part 1. Aphrodite was irresistible. Everyone fell in love with her. Gods, mortals, probably furniture if it could talk. She married Hephaestus, the god of blacksmiths, who, by the way, was the only unattractive god on Olympus. He was lame from birth because Hera threw him off the mountain in disgust. Great parenting. Aphrodite didn't exactly stay faithful. She had a famous affair with Ares, the god of war, which makes sense. Passion and destruction often go hand in hand in Greek logic. When Hephaestus found out, he set a trap, an invisible net over their bed. The next time Ares and Aphrodite met, the net caught them mid-act, and Hephaestus invited the entire pantheon to witness the scandal. Even Poseidon laughed. And Poseidon laughs at almost nothing. The moral? Even in ancient mythology, workplace gossip spreads fast. Ares, the war god who just liked fighting. Speaking of Ares, he was basically the divine embodiment of rage. Unlike Athena, who represented strategy, Ares was pure chaos, the sound of swords clashing and men screaming. He wasn't particularly clever or likable. Even his parents, Zeus and Hera, thought he was exhausting. But Ares did have moments of vulnerability, mostly involving Aphrodite. Together they had several children, including Eros, aka Cupid, who grew up to cause love-related chaos everywhere he went. Ares also had a complicated rivalry with Hercules, who beat him up more than once. So much for the god of war. Hephaestus, the overlooked genius poor. Hephaestus deserves a moment. Thrown from Olympus as a baby, raised by sea nymphs, and later forced to build weapons for the gods. He was the quiet craftsman in a family of drama addicts. He made Zeus's thunderbolts, Hermes' winged sandals, and even Pandora herself. He was also the one who split open Zeus's skull to let Athena out, which probably didn't make him popular at dinner parties. Greek mythology calls this the Age of Heroes, But honestly, it could have been called the Age of Questionable Parenting. It's the period when Zeus and company couldn't stop interfering in mortal affairs, producing offspring who spent their short lives swinging swords, solving riddles, and trying to survive divine family drama. Every one of them was special, which in Greek myth means destined for heartbreak. Hercules, strong, sensitive, and eternally unlucky. Let's start with the poster child of heroic misery, Heracles, or Hercules if you prefer the Roman remix. He was the son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Alcmene. Naturally, Hera hated him before he was even born. Zeus had disguised himself as Alcmene's husband to conceive him, which, is already a bad start. And Hera made it her mission to ruin Heracles' life from day one. She sent snakes to kill him in his cradle. Baby Heracles promptly strangled them with his tiny, god-powered hands. So far, so promising. He grew up strong, brave, and heroic. But Hera wasn't done. She drove him into a fit of divine madness. And in that frenzy, he killed his own wife and children. Yeah, it's that kind of story. When he came to his senses, devastated, the Oracle of Delphi told him the only way to atone was to serve King Eurystheus and complete whatever impossible tasks were assigned. Thus began the 12 Labors of Heracles, the ancient equivalent of a cosmic to-do list written by someone who really hated you. He slayed the Nemean lion with its impenetrable hide, cleaned the Augean stables in one day by rerouting rivers, because why not, and captured Cerberus, the three-headed guard dog of the underworld. Through it all, he suffered endlessly, strength without peace, victory without rest, and in the end, his mortal body was burned away on a pyre. But Zeus brought his divine half to Olympus, finally granting him peace and immortality. So yes, Heracles made it to heaven, but probably with the kind of emotional baggage that not even ambrosia could fix. Perseus, the head collector. Next up is Perseus, another favorite of the gods, and another child of Zeus, because of course, his mother, Danae, was imprisoned in a bronze chamber by her father, who'd heard a prophecy that his grandson would kill him. Zeus, apparently intrigued by interior design, entered the chamber as a shower of golden light, which somehow resulted in a baby. We're just not going to question the logistics. Perseus grew up heroic and charming, and when the local king tried to get rid of him, he was sent to fetch the head of Medusa, one of the Gorgons, the woman with snakes for hair whose gaze turned people to stone. Athena and Hermes both helped him, giving him reflective armor and winged sandals. Perseus managed to behead Medusa while she slept. Not exactly sportsmanlike, but effective. From her blood sprang Pegasus, the winged horse. Because Greek mythology never misses a chance for dramatic imagery. Perseus went on to rescue Andromeda, slay a sea monster, and accidentally fulfill the prophecy by killing his grandfather, proving once again that in Greek stories, trying to avoid fate only guarantees it happens in the most inconvenient way possible. Theseus, the hero who forgot his dad. Then there's Theseus, the pride of Athens and professional monster slayer. He was the son of King Aegeus, or Poseidon, depending on which myth you ask, and grew up determined to prove himself. When he came of age, he rolled a boulder aside to retrieve his father's sword and sandals, symbolic proof that he was worthy of the royal lineage. Then he marched off to Athens, clearing the road of bandits and bullies along the way. His most famous adventure, though, was in Crete, where he volunteered to slay the Minotaur, half man, half bull, full nightmare, who lived in the labyrinth built by Daedalus. With the help of Ariadne, daughter of King Minos, Theseus used a ball of thread to find his way in and out. He killed the beast, freed the captives, and sailed home victorious. But then, in true Greek fashion, he accidentally left Ariadne behind on an island and forgot to change his ship's sails from black to white. His father, seeing the black sails, assumed his son was dead and threw himself into the sea, which is why it's called the Aegean Sea. So, Theseus may have been a hero, but also possibly the world's most tragic forgetter. Jason and the Argonauts, the original group project. Some myths are about single heroes. Then there's Jason, who apparently decided the best way to complete a dangerous quest was to invite 50 other heroes and hope for the best. Jason's goal was to retrieve the Golden Fleece. Guarded by a dragon at the edge of the known world, he gathered a crew of legends, Hercules, Orpheus, Atalanta, and a few dozen others, and set sail on the ship Argo, named after its builder. Their journey was pure chaos: harpies attacking old men, clashing rocks that crushed ships, seductive nymphs luring sailors to their doom. You know, just standard travel inconveniences. But the key part of the story is Medea, a powerful sorceress who fell in love with Jason, thanks to divine meddling, of course. She helped him win the fleece, betrayed her own family, and fled with him. Jason promised her a happy life in Greece, and then promptly dumped her for another princess. Medea's revenge became infamous. Let's just say it involved fire, poison, and a few regrettable family members. Moral of the story: if a witch helps you slay a dragon, maybe don't ghost her afterward. Orpheus, the musician who almost beat. Death while other heroes fought monsters, Orpheus fought silence. He was a musician so gifted that his songs could charm animals, trees, and even stones. He fell in love with Eurydice, but shortly after their wedding, she was bitten by a snake and died. Unable to accept her loss, Orpheus descended into the underworld. His music moved even Hades and Persephone to pity, and they agreed to let Eurydice return, on one condition. Orpheus must not look back until they'd both reached the surface. He almost made it. Almost. Just before they reached daylight, he turned around. Eurydice vanished, this time forever. Orpheus wandered the world in grief, singing to forests and rivers until he too met a tragic end, torn apart by followers of Dionysus who couldn't stand his melancholy. His story became the quietest and most haunting of all Greek myths, proof that sometimes even beauty can't outsing sorrow. Atalanta, the fastest woman in a man's world. Let's not forget Atalanta, one of the few women who got to be a full-fledged hero. Abandoned as a baby, raised by a bear, because of course she was, Atalanta grew into a fierce hunter who could outrun any man. She joined the Caledonian boar hunt, where she was the first to wound the monstrous beast, though a man later claimed the credit. Ancient gender dynamics. Everyone. When suitors lined up to marry her, she made a rule. Anyone who could beat her in a foot race could have her hand. Anyone who lost would die. Many tried. None succeeded. Then came Hippomenes, who prayed to Aphrodite for help. The goddess gave him 3 golden apples, which he dropped during the race. Atalanta, curious, paused to pick them up, and lost. She married him. And later, both were turned into lions for offending a temple. Because in Greek myth, even love stories end in random metamorphosis. Bellerophon, the original overachiever. Then there was Bellerophon, hero of Corinth, who tamed the winged horse Pegasus, yes, the same one born from Medusa's head incident, and slayed the Chimera, a fire-breathing hybrid of lion, goat, and serpent. Bellerophon became so successful that he decided to fly Pegasus all the way to Mount Olympus itself, because humility wasn't exactly trending in ancient Greece. Zeus, unimpressed, sent a gadfly to sting Pegasus mid-flight. The horse bucked, Bellerophon fell, and spent the rest of his life wandering, crippled and forgotten. Lesson learned. In Greek mythology, ambition looks great, right up until gravity gets involved. Oedipus, the man who solved the wrong riddle. And then there's the story everyone wishes they didn't know. Oedipus, king of Thebes. His parents heard a prophecy that their son would kill his father and marry his mother, so naturally they tried to outsmart destiny by abandoning him. He was rescued, raised elsewhere, and, years later, killed a stranger at a crossroads during an argument. Spoiler, it was his father. He then solved the riddle of the Sphinx, became king, and married the widowed queen. Yes, his mother. When the truth came out, he blinded himself and went into exile. Because sometimes Greek tragedy doesn't even pretend to be subtle. The moral? Don't try to outrun fate. It's better at directions than you are. Odysseus, the man who took the scenic route. Home finally. There's Odysseus, the trickster king of Ithaca, famous for his very long trip home from the Trojan War. After helping the Greeks win with that whole Trojan horse stunt, Odysseus spent 10 years wandering the seas. He fought the Cyclops Polyphemus, Poseidon's son, was trapped by Circe the sorceress, visited the underworld, resisted the sirens, and survived shipwrecks, but still couldn't resist bragging to everyone about his cleverness. Poseidon, offended, kept him lost even longer. When Odysseus finally returned home, his palace was full of arrogant suitors courting his wife, Penelope. So he disguised himself as a beggar, shot them all with a bow, and reunited with his family. A happy ending, sort of. Though in true Greek style, even happiness comes with a side of exhaustion. Hey again, sleepy scholars. Still with me? Good. Let's drift softly now from the age of Titans into the shinier, messier, infinitely more dramatic era of the Olympians. Yes, the famous 12 gods who apparently ruled everything, yet still couldn't stop meddling in mortal love triangles and family feuds. When we last left off, Zeus had staged a full-scale divine coup against his father Cronus. Now, in the kind of power move only a thunder-wielding maniac could pull off, he took the sky as his personal real estate. Poseidon got the sea, Hades got the underworld, and humanity. Well, we got taxes and earthquakes. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Zeus, king of kings, was supposedly wise and just. He was also, to put it mildly, an absolute walking scandal factory. His whole divine resume reads like professional lightning enthusiast and part-time shape-shifting adulterer. You see, Zeus's love life was not so much a romance as it was a natural disaster that happened repeatedly. His marriage to Hera was meant to stabilize Olympus, a celestial power couple. But it played out more like a never-ending reality show where both contestants refused to get therapy. Let's start with Hera, queen of the gods. Elegant, commanding, beautiful, and also chronically exhausted from dealing with her husband's ongoing, extracurricular activities. Every time Zeus cheated, which was roughly as often as it rained, Hera retaliated, not against him, of course, but against the poor mortal women or unfortunate offspring involved. For example, take Io, a mortal priestess who caught Zeus's wandering eye. To protect her from Hera's jealousy, Zeus turned Io into a cow. Hera, seeing right through it, sent a giant, 100-eyed monster named Argus to babysit the bovine mistress. The plan didn't end well. Zeus eventually had Hermes kill Argus, and Hera, in one of Greek mythology's more poetic gestures, took his eyes and placed them on the tail of her sacred bird, the peacock. Which, if nothing else, proves that even divine revenge can have a strong aesthetic sense. Then there was Semele, a mortal woman who dared to ask Zeus to reveal himself in his full godly glory. Unfortunately, no one told her that seeing Zeus in his true form was basically the ancient Greek equivalent of sticking your face into the sun. She vaporized instantly. From her ashes, Zeus saved their unborn son, stitched him into his own thigh, and later gave birth to Dionysus, the god of wine, madness, and extremely poor decision-making. So yes, that's right. Zeus literally thigh-birthed a god. Now Hera wasn't without her own moments of, let's say, complicated parenting. She gave birth to Hephaestus, the god of blacksmiths and fire. But when he turned out less than aesthetically perfect, perhaps due to her creative solo conception, she tossed him off Mount Olympus. He later became one of the few gods with a job, so in a way, things worked out. But we're getting ahead. Let's zoom out and meet the rest of the dysfunctional Olympian family, shall we? Poseidon, Zeus's brother and the salty sea god, ruled the ocean like a moody landlord. His weapon was a trident, which he used both for smiting enemies and occasionally, it seems, for making unnecessary earthquakes when he didn't get his way. Poseidon had an equally colorful romantic record. His flings ranged from nymphs to gorgons to random mortals who probably just wanted to go for a swim. His offspring included sea monsters, horses, and one unfortunate cyclops named Polyphemus, who later developed a serious problem with a guy named Odysseus. Then we have Hades. Poor Hades. The misunderstood middle brother. While Zeus and Poseidon got the bright, flashy realms, Hades drew the short straw. eternal management of the underworld. Contrary to popular belief, he wasn't evil, just, perpetually gloomy. His main scandal involved Persephone, daughter of Demeter, whom he, let's say, relocated to the underworld against her will. After some divine negotiations, a deal was struck. Persephone would spend half the year above ground with her mother, Q spring and summer, and half below with Hades, autumn and winter. So yes, according to the Greeks, the changing of the seasons was just one long custody battle. Speaking of Demeter, she was the goddess of agriculture and motherly despair. When Persephone was taken, Demeter basically shut down all farming operations in protest. Famine, frost, the works. Humanity nearly starved before Zeus finally intervened. Because apparently divine justice only happens when mortals start dying in bulk. And then there was Athena, born fully grown and armed from Zeus's forehead, after he swallowed her mother, Metis. Long story. The short version: Zeus had heard a prophecy that Metis would bear a child who might overthrow him, so he ate her. Problem solved? Not quite. Instead, Athena emerged later, shouting and helmeted from her father's skull. So yes, we can safely say Zeus's family planning methods were unconventional. Athena was clever, calm, and terrifyingly rational. Basically the ancient world's version of the one person in every group project who actually reads the instructions. She became the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and occasionally war, though she preferred intellect over brute force. Meanwhile, her half-brother Ares, god of war, was the total opposite. Loud, violent, impulsive, and not exactly popular among either gods or mortals. Even Zeus found him exhausting. Ares was the embodiment of chaotic battlefield energy, all blood and no brains. His on-again, off-again affair with Aphrodite didn't help his image much either. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, had one of the most confusing origin stories in mythology. Depending on the version, she either sprang from the sea foam created by Uranus's severed genitals, thanks again, Cronus, or was simply born from Zeus and Dione. Either way, she represented desire, charm, and the dangerous kind of beauty that makes mortals do incredibly stupid things. Her marriage to Hephaestus was, predictably, a disaster. She was constantly cheating on him, most famously with Ares, and Hephaestus eventually trapped the lovers in a magical net to humiliate them in front of the other gods. Which he did, publicly, during dinner. Greek mythology, everyone. Then came Hermes, the trickster, the messenger god. Patron of thieves, travelers, and eloquent liars, Hermes was one of those people who could talk their way out of anything. He invented the lyre, stole Apollo's cattle as a baby, and somehow managed to charm his way into divine forgiveness. A classic overachiever with no respect for personal boundaries. And we can't forget Artemis and Apollo, twin children of Zeus and the Titaness Leto. Hera, still not over Zeus's wandering affections, tried to prevent Leto from giving birth anywhere on Earth. So she found an island, Delos, which technically wasn't attached to the ground. Loopholes for the win. Apollo, god of light, music, and prophecy, became one of the most adored and occasionally most insufferable of the Olympians. Artemis, goddess of the hunt and the moon, preferred solitude, forests, and an all-female entourage, and was not shy about shooting anyone who disrespected her. Together, these 12 formed the messy, divine board of directors known as the Olympians. From their palace atop Mount Olympus, they ruled the world, when they weren't busy ruining mortal lives for entertainment, competing in who could be pettiest, or holding elaborate feasts that ended in emotional outbursts. Hey again, dreamers. Let's stretch out, settle in, and drift further down the marble steps of Mount Olympus, right into the messy intersection where gods and mortals kept colliding like an ancient soap opera that never ended. Because if there's one thing Greek mythology teaches us, it's that divine beings absolutely cannot mind their own business. By this point in the mythic timeline, the Olympians had everything: palaces in the clouds, feasts of nectar and ambrosia, and an infinite supply of ego. But apparently immortality gets boring fast. So the gods started entertaining themselves by interfering with humans, blessing a few, cursing many, and seducing just about everyone in between. And who better to start with than our old friend Zeus? Yes, we're still talking about him, because of course we are. The man never stopped. Zeus had an entire catalog of romantic conquests. And by romantic, we mean deeply questionable. There was Leda, whom he approached disguised as a swan, because sure, why not try bird cosplay? There was Europa, whom he abducted while disguised as a bull, Smooth. And Danae, whom he impregnated as a golden shower of light. You can imagine how awkward that story was to explain at family dinners. But perhaps the most famous of Zeus's mortal entanglements was with Alcmene, who became the mother of Hercules. Now Zeus told Alcmene he was her husband Amphitryon, just glowing and more charming. The result was a demigod baby destined to become one of the most overworked heroes in mythology. Hercules, known later as Hercules in the Roman remix, was strong enough to wrestle lions and hold up the sky if someone asked politely enough. But his life was one long tragedy reel, largely because Hera, remember her, still wasn't over Zeus's habits. From the moment Heracles was born, Hera made it her full-time hobby to ruin his existence. She even sent snakes to kill him in his cradle, which toddler Heracles casually strangled. Later, she drove him into a divine rage that made him kill his own wife and children. A horrifying act that led to his famous 12 labors of penance. These labors were, essentially, a series of impossible chores assigned by his cousin Eurystheus, who hated him. Think, killing the Nemean lion, capturing the Ceryneian hind, cleaning the Augean stables in one day, which, for the record, he solved by rerouting a river through them, efficiency king, and stealing the apples of the Hesperides guarded by a 100-headed dragon. Through all this, Heracles never really got peace. His entire life reads like a marathon of suffering with brief commercial breaks of glory. Eventually, poisoned by his wife, accidentally of course, long story involving a centaur, Heracles burned himself alive on a funeral pyre, ascended to Olympus, and finally got to be a god. Hera even forgave him, which must have been awkward for literally everyone at divine brunch. Now, while Heracles was off doing his high-effort trauma workout, other mortals were also stumbling through divine interference. Take Perseus, for example, another semi-divine son of Zeus. His origin story starts with Danae, the woman Zeus visited as a golden rain. Her father, King Acrisius, had locked her in a bronze chamber to prevent a prophecy that her son would kill him. Zeus's unconventional infiltration method clearly bypassed that plan. When Perseus was born, Acrisius panicked and locked both mother and child in a chest, tossing them into the sea. They miraculously survived, because Greek heroes always conveniently do. And Perseus grew up to become a surprisingly decent guy for someone raised under divine chaos. His main claim to fame, of course, was beheading Medusa, the Gorgon with snakes for hair, equipped with a mirrored shield from Athena, winged sandals from Hermes, and a bag to store her head, because you don't just leave a cursed skull lying around. Perseus pulled it off. He even used Medusa's head later to turn his enemies into stone, practical and horrifying. Then there was Theseus, the original Athenian overachiever, son of King Aegeus, or possibly Poseidon. The paternity tests were inconclusive. Theseus was the guy who decided to travel to Crete to kill the Minotaur, a half-man, half-bull creature born from yet another divine prank. The Minotaur's backstory, by the way, is peak Greek weirdness. King Minos of Crete had angered Poseidon, who made Minos' wife, Pasiphae, fall in love with a bull. Yes, that kind of love. She commissioned the inventor Daedalus to build her a hollow wooden cow disguise. And, well, let's just say the plan worked a little too well. The Minotaur was the result. Minos hid the creature in a massive labyrinth, where he fed it Athenian youths every 9 years. Theseus, with help from Minos' daughter Ariadne, used a ball of thread to navigate the maze, killed the monster, and sailed home victorious. Unfortunately, he forgot to change his ship's sails from black, mourning, to white, victory. His father saw the dark sails from afar, assumed he was dead, and jumped into the sea in grief, hence the name Aegean Sea. Tragic? Yes, but at least thematically consistent. And then there was Jason and the Argonauts. Jason was another unlucky overachiever sent to retrieve the Golden Fleece, guarded by dragons and curses. He assembled Greece's first dysfunctional team of heroes, the Argonauts. including Hercules, Orpheus, and a handful of people who really should have stayed home. Jason succeeded, largely thanks to the sorceress Medea, who fell in love with him and betrayed her own family to help him. In return, Jason later dumped her for a younger princess. Medea responded with what you might call a scorched earth breakup. She murdered the new bride, and depending on the version, her own children. It's safe to say therapy would have been useful for everyone involved. Another favorite mortal disaster, Orpheus and Eurydice. Orpheus, the legendary musician, could charm anyone, humans, animals, even rocks, with his lyre. When his wife Eurydice died, he went down to the underworld to bring her back. Hades, surprisingly moved, agreed to let her return on one condition. Orpheus couldn't look back until they reached the surface. Of course he did. He always do. He turned just before leaving the underworld, saw Eurydice, and she vanished forever. The lesson: trust issues ruin everything, even resurrection attempts. But maybe the saddest story of all is Prometheus, the titan who made humans, sculpting them from clay, and then gave them fire against Zeus's orders. For this crime of compassion, Zeus chained him to a rock where an eagle ate his liver daily, only for it to grow back each night. Immortality is great until you realize it includes infinite digestive trauma. Eventually, Hercules freed him, proving that even divine punishment has loopholes if you're strong enough and mildly defiant. And as centuries of myth rolled by, humans started realizing that the gods weren't necessarily role models. They were powerful, yes, but deeply flawed, jealous, impulsive, insecure, and prone to tantrums, which honestly makes them far more interesting. The Greeks didn't worship perfect beings. They worshipped beings who were relatable in the most dysfunctional way possible. The Olympians weren't paragons of virtue. They were exaggerated mirrors of human chaos. So, as the myths expanded, the line between divine and mortal blurred more and more. Heroes became gods. Gods acted like children, and mortals kept paying the price. Welcome back, wanderers of the mythic night. Let's dim the torchlight a little and wander quietly into the late age of Greek mythology, that hazy twilight between divine chaos and human history. It's the part of the story where gods still meddle, but mortals start running the show, and running it rather poorly, as usual. You see, by this point in mythic time, the Olympians had gotten comfortable. Their great wars were over. Titans were locked away. Humanity had fire, crops, cities, and way too much ambition. The gods, bored as ever, started entertaining themselves by using mortals as chess pieces in increasingly elaborate dramas. And nowhere was this more obvious, or ridiculous, than in the events that led up to the Trojan War. But before we sail for Troy, let's set the stage. The world of heroes had become crowded. You had men like Bellerophon, who tamed the winged horse Pegasus and slayed the monstrous Chimera, a lion-goat-snake hybrid that sounds like it was invented by a sleep-deprived artist. Bellerophon was adored by the gods for a while, until he made the classic Greek hero mistake, trying to fly to Olympus itself. Zeus, unimpressed by the aerial intrusion, sent a gadfly to sting Pegasus. The horse bucked, Bellerophon fell and spent the rest of his life blind and miserable. Moral of the story? Don't bother the gods before brunch. Meanwhile, the House of Atreus was becoming the ancient Greek equivalent of a true crime documentary. This family tree makes Game of Thrones look wholesome. It started with Tantalus, a king so arrogant that he served his own son, Pelops, as a meal to the gods, just to see if they'd notice. Spoiler, they did. The gods resurrected Pelops, punished Tantalus eternally in the underworld, and set off a curse that would cling to his descendants like divine duct tape. Pelops' sons, Atreus and Thyestes, continued the family tradition of psychological warfare. Atreus caught Thyestes having an affair with his wife, which of course meant he had to kill Thyestes' children and serve them to him at dinner. Because apparently, nobody in this bloodline could just write a strongly worded letter. The curse deepened. From this house would later come Agamemnon and Menelaus, two brothers whose poor life choices would ignite one of the most famous wars in mythology. But before we reach the beaches of Troy, there's one more celestial fiasco to attend: the wedding of Peleus and Thetis. Thetis, a sea nymph, was so beautiful that both Zeus and Poseidon wanted her. That is, until they heard a prophecy that her son would be greater than his father. Suddenly, neither of them wanted to risk it. So they married her off to a mortal instead, Peleus. Their wedding was supposed to be peaceful. Of course it wasn't. One goddess, Eris, goddess of discord, wasn't invited. Because when you literally personify chaos, you don't make the guest list. Furious, she crashed the party anyway, tossing a golden apple onto the table inscribed with the words, "For the fairest." This, dear listeners, was the ancient equivalent of dropping a grenade in a group chat. 3 goddesses immediately claimed the apple: Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. None of them were known for humility. Zeus, wisely refusing to get involved, appointed a mortal prince named Paris of Troy to judge which goddess deserved the title. Each goddess offered him a bribe. Hera promised power, Athena promised wisdom and victory in battle, and Aphrodite promised the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris, being young, impulsive, and profoundly unwise, chose Aphrodite, which meant he would later win Helen of Sparta, who unfortunately was already married to King Menelaus. And just like that, the stage was set for the Trojan War. Helen, often called the face that launched 1,000 ships, didn't actually have much say in any of this. Depending on the version, she was abducted, persuaded, or magically whisked away to Troy by Aphrodite's influence. Either way, Menelaus was furious, and his brother Agamemnon saw an opportunity for a grand campaign, part rescue mission, part ego trip, part centuries-long curse fulfillment. The Greeks assembled the greatest army ever mythologized: Achilles, son of Peleus and Thetis, invincible except for that one famously exposed heel; Odysseus, clever and reluctant but eventually conscripted; Ajax, big and moody; and a dozen other heroes with tragic fates waiting patiently in their calendars. But before they could even sail, Agamemnon made the rookie mistake of angering Artemis by killing one of her sacred deer. She responded by stopping the winds. The only way to appease her, apparently, was to sacrifice his daughter, Iphigenia. Depending on the version, she was either killed or swapped out last minute for a deer. Either way, not a great start for team morale. When the Greeks finally reached Troy, the war dragged on for 10 long years. Though to be honest, most of the war was spent arguing, sulking, and occasionally stabbing each other. The gods naturally took sides. Hera, Athena, and Poseidon supported the Greeks. Aphrodite, Apollo, and Ares backed the Trojans. Zeus, as always, claimed neutrality while quietly meddling anyway. The fighting itself was less epic heroism and more divine family squabble with collateral damage. Achilles, the star of the show, spent half the war refusing to fight because Agamemnon had stolen his captive woman, Briseis. When his best friend Patroclus was killed by Hector, Troy's noble prince and all-around decent guy, Achilles finally rejoined the war in a rage. He killed Hector, dragged his body around the walls of Troy for days, and only returned it after Hector's father, Priam, begged him in tears. It was one of the few moments in Greek myth where someone acted with a shred of humanity. Eventually, of course, the Greeks resorted to trickery. Odysseus came up with a plan so absurd it actually worked: the Trojan horse. The Trojans, having the collective common sense of a soap bubble, wheeled the giant wooden horse into their city as a victory trophy. That night, Greek soldiers crept out of it, opened the gates, and destroyed Troy. It was glorious. It was devastating. It was deeply stupid. And when it was all over, the gods began to fade. You can almost feel it, even in the myths themselves. That shift from divine chaos to human consequence. The heroes went home, but none of them found peace. Achilles was dead. Ajax fell on his sword. Odysseus spent a decade wandering home while Poseidon gleefully ruined his travel plans. Agamemnon returned victorious, only to be murdered in his bathtub by his wife Clytemnestra because, surprise, she was still angry about that whole sacrificing our daughter thing. Even the gods themselves seemed tired. Their petty rivalries dulled into distant echoes. Temples remained, yes, but worship slowly shifted from storytelling to ceremony. Humanity was learning to think for itself, and philosophy was replacing mythology. The Greeks started asking questions like, what if lightning isn't Zeus throwing a tantrum, but just lightning? Welcome back, Night Wanderer. You've made it through the lightning storms, the love triangles, the wars, and the curses. Now, as we sink gently into the quiet hours of the night, Let's wander through the soft twilight of Greek mythology, the age when the gods stopped shouting and started fading into whispers. This is where myth begins to melt into history. The wild, chaotic world of Zeus and Hera, of heroes and monsters, slowly gives way to philosophers, poets, and skeptics, people who began to ask, ever so politely, do we really need to blame Aphrodite every time someone makes a bad romantic decision? The Greeks, ever curious, began to evolve their stories. The great storytellers, Homer, Hesiod, and later the tragedians, had already immortalized the gods in verse. But by the time the philosophers showed up, people like Thales, Anaximander, Socrates, and Plato, there was a new energy in the air. People were still telling the same old myths, but now with a raised eyebrow, as if to say, okay, but maybe Zeus is just the sky? The gods didn't vanish overnight. They lingered, as all old beliefs do, in temples, in festivals, in the quiet awe of the natural world. But humanity's gaze had shifted. Instead of waiting for divine instruction, people started looking for patterns, in stars, in water, in numbers, and in themselves. Let's take a moment to feel that slow turning of the age, that transformation from sacred story to speculative thought. For centuries, Greek mythology had given people a way to make sense of life's chaos. Storms, love, death, war, all of it explained by capricious beings with familiar flaws. But now logic was creeping in. The thunderbolt wasn't a tantrum anymore. It was physics. The plague wasn't divine punishment. It was medicine waiting to be discovered. Still, even as rational thought blossomed, the myths refused to die completely. They adapted. The gods became symbols, living metaphors for human emotion, for nature's forces, for the messy poetry of existence. Take Apollo, for instance. No longer just the god of the sun, he became a symbol of order, clarity, and reason. The steady light of intellect guiding humanity out of superstition. His counterpart, Dionysus, remained as the embodiment of emotion, chaos, and instinct, reminding people that no matter how logical they became, they were still driven by something primal beneath the surface. Greek tragedy, that glorious invention of the classical age, became the bridge between myth and reason. Playwrights like Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides reimagined the old stories with human depth, turning once divine figures into flesh and blood characters. Oedipus, for example, wasn't just cursed by fate. He was undone by his own choices, his own hubris. The gods became background noise, distant, indifferent, maybe even imaginary. It was an elegant downgrade. Even Prometheus, that eternal symbol of rebellion, started to feel more like a hero of human progress than a victim of divine punishment. His stolen fire, once the cause of his torment, became the metaphor for enlightenment itself. Humanity was learning to make its own fire, to question, to build, to create. And as centuries drifted on, Greece itself began to change. Alexander the Great spread Greek language and culture far across the known world, but in doing so, he diluted its purity. Local gods blended with foreign ones. Zeus became Jupiter, Hermes became Mercury, Aphrodite became Venus. The stories spread like seeds, changing shape with every soil they touched. By the time the Romans adopted Greek mythology, it had already become something softer, more decorative, less devout. The gods were household names, sure, but not sacred ones. They were characters, magnificent, flawed, and entertaining. Rome built temples, yes, but with the same enthusiasm modern people build museums, as tributes to beauty, not necessarily belief, and then slowly, another voice began to rise, one that would change the landscape of the ancient world entirely. The early murmurs of Christianity began to echo through the Mediterranean. The old gods, proud and eternal, found themselves outshouted by a new kind of faith. One God, one truth, one story. To the Olympians, it must have felt like a cosmic eviction. Temples once full of incense and song fell silent. Statues crumbled. Priests retired. Festivals dwindled. People stopped praying to Zeus for rain and started praying to saints for mercy. But even as the worship ended, the stories endured. You can't really kill a myth. You can only change how it's told. The philosophers turned them into allegory. The poets turned them into art. The sculptors froze them in marble. And centuries later, when the Renaissance rolled around, Europe dusted them off and put them back on display. Not as gods, but as symbols of the eternal human drama. Zeus became authority. Hera became dignity. Athena became intellect. Aphrodite became beauty. Ares became rage. They weren't worshipped, but they were remembered. And maybe that's the better kind of immortality. Even now, thousands of years later, they linger in our language. We still speak of Herculean strength, of Achilles' heels, of Pandora's box. We still tell stories about hubris, jealousy, love, and fate, just with different names, different costumes. You see, Greek mythology never really ended. It just shifted form, fading from the sacred to the symbolic, from thunder to metaphor, from altar to bedtime story. So maybe the gods didn't die at all. Maybe they're still here, not up on Olympus, but in every story we tell, every human flaw we laugh at, every grand dream we chase. Because in the end, the Greeks weren't worshipping perfection. They were worshipping themselves in all their beauty and madness. Their gods were mirrors, and the reflection, somehow, still fits. So, as we close this long, winding tale of divine chaos and mortal wonder, let's leave the last word to the silence of the mountains, the shimmer of the sea, and the quiet thought that maybe, just maybe, the old gods still listen. Hey again, Night Wanderer. If you're still awake, congratulations. You've now outlasted several generations of Greek heroes, at least 2 divine coups, and 1 truly exhausting family drama on Mount Olympus. But don't worry. Tonight, we're not diving into another war or curse. Instead, we're going somewhere quieter, into the shadows of history, where myths don't vanish. They transform. Because even after the temples crumbled and the philosophers declared that Zeus was probably just a metaphor for weather patterns, Greek mythology refused to go quietly. It lingered, in art, in poetry, in the corners of imagination where old gods hide and wait for someone to remember them. Let's drift gently into the afterlife of the Olympians, the long echo that began when the worship stopped. When the Roman Empire converted to Christianity, it was like someone changed the channel on all of Olympus. One day, priests were burning incense for Athena. The next, those same temples were being converted into churches, with saints taking over the real estate. But here's the thing. You can erase rituals, not stories. The Greeks had spent 1,000 years telling these tales, carving them into stone, painting them on pottery, teaching them to children. And once a story gets that deep into the cultural bloodstream, it doesn't die. It just hides under new clothes. For a while, the myths survived in secret. Pagan scholars, or old religion enthusiasts, if you want to be generous, kept teaching them as part of the classics. The gods became literature, which made them safe again. You could talk about Zeus and Hera as long as you said, "Oh, of course, we don't believe this anymore. It's just cultural." A bit like people quoting horoscopes, while claiming not to believe in astrology. Even the early Christians couldn't completely resist the beauty of Greek myth. They condemned it, yeah, but they also borrowed from it. The idea of heaven above and a fiery underworld below, that's older than Christianity. The concept of divine judgment, angels, demons, and eternal punishment, all shadows of earlier Greek and Near Eastern ideas. It's almost poetic, really. The new religion built its story on the ruins of the old one, and the ruins still whispered through. As the centuries rolled on, the myths entered what we might call their medieval retirement phase. They were no longer gods, but legends. Monks copied them down in Latin manuscripts, sometimes rolling their eyes, sometimes secretly fascinated. Imagine a cloistered scribe in the 12th century, hunched over a candle, dutifully transcribing the story of Aphrodite rising from the sea, while quietly thinking, honestly, that sounds kind of lovely. By the time the Renaissance arrived, Europe was ready to flirt with the old gods again. Artists, poets, and thinkers were rediscovering ancient Greece with wide-eyed awe. It was like the gods had been frozen in marble, waiting for someone to thaw them out. Suddenly, Aphrodite was back, painted on seashells and frescoes. Hermes appeared in sculpture gardens. Athena was quoted by scholars as the ultimate symbol of wisdom and intellect. And Zeus? He got promoted to classical symbol of power. Basically, the Renaissance version of a motivational poster. The humanists of the 15th and 16th centuries didn't pray to the gods, but they definitely admired them. The myths became metaphors for ideals: beauty, knowledge, courage, tragedy. In a way, it was the gods' most successful rebranding. Then came the Enlightenment, and with it, a quieter, more academic kind of immortality. The philosophers of Europe, ever the skeptics, treated mythology like a science experiment. They dissected it, categorized it, and tried to explain what each story meant. Zeus wasn't real, they said, but maybe he represented man's awe before nature. Athena symbolized reason. Dionysus stood for instinct and emotion. It was tidy, intellectual, and deeply unromantic, but it kept the myths alive, albeit on a bookshelf instead of an altar. The Romantics, of course, couldn't stand that kind of cold dissection, so in the 18th and 19th centuries, they brought passion back into the picture. To them, mythology wasn't something to analyze. It was something to feel. Writers like Keats, Shelley, and Byron turned the gods into poetic muses. Painters resurrected them in swirling clouds and tragic poses. Even composers got involved, turning Greek tragedies into operas, all thunder and longing and doomed love. By this point, the Olympians had evolved again, from religion to metaphor to full-blown artistic inspiration. They had become the language through which humans explored themselves, because let's face it, we never really stopped telling those stories. We just updated the special effects. Fast forward to modern times, and Greek mythology is everywhere, hiding in plain sight. You'll find it in fantasy novels, in comic books, in blockbuster movies. Zeus shows up in video games. Hermes has a sneaker brand. Apollo's name is on spacecraft. Athena is basically the unofficial mascot of every university that wants to sound clever. Even the old myths themselves keep getting retold. Every few years, someone reboots them. Less toga, more plot twists. Percy Jackson fights monsters with ADHD. The gods argue on Mount Olympus in Netflix dramas. Medusa gets a feminist rewrite. It's fascinating, really. We no longer believe the gods control the world, but we still use them to explain it. The same way the ancients once said Poseidon did it, when a wave wrecked their ship. We now say Mercury's in retrograde, when our Wi-Fi goes out. Some habits never die. But beneath the memes and the pop culture references, there's still something timeless in those stories. The Greeks, for all their chaos, captured something universal: the strange, beautiful contradiction of being human. Their gods were powerful, but never perfect. They were jealous, vain, loving, cruel, creative, and endlessly petty. Just like us. That's why they've lasted. Because they were us, just magnified and immortalized. And maybe that's why Greek mythology feels so familiar even now. Because it's not really about gods at all. It's about desire and ego, failure and redemption, family and fate, the things we all wrestle with, even without thunderbolts or divine lineage. Hey there, Night Wanderer. You're still here, drifting between sleep and story, which is exactly where the Greeks would have wanted you. Welcome to the last soft ripple of this long mythic sea. Tonight we're not climbing Olympus or battling monsters. We're floating, in the quiet space where myth, memory, and imagination blur together. Because after all the wars and curses, after the temples and philosophers, what's left of Greek mythology isn't marble or thunder. It's something gentler. A hum. A half-remembered dream the world refuses to wake from. Let's wander through that dream together. Imagine Greece, long after the fall of its empires. The temples are broken, the statues eroded, the sea still whispers against the same white cliffs, but the prayers have stopped. And yet, at night, when the wind moves through the olive groves, it feels like the old stories are still there, like the gods are sleeping just beneath the soil. In the villages, even centuries later, people still left offerings, not to Zeus officially, but maybe to something. Old habits die hard. A loaf of bread by a spring, a coin in a fountain, a whispered wish at a mountain's foot. Humans are superstitious creatures, and the Greeks were the original masters of that quiet reverence for mystery. Even after Christianity had ruled the land for generations, the people still used the old names sometimes, carefully, almost apologetically. Not as worship, just as memory. A fisherman might joke that Poseidon was in a mood that day. A farmer might thank Demeter for a good harvest. even if he also went to church on Sunday. You could say it wasn't belief anymore. It was something warmer, affection maybe. The gods had become part of the landscape, woven into the country's bones. When archaeologists began uncovering Greece in the 18th and 19th centuries, they weren't just digging up ruins. They were exhuming a mythology that had never really died. Imagine them brushing dust from a cracked marble face, maybe Apollo, maybe Hermes, and realizing that the people who carved it once believed it was alive. They saw gods not as distant forces, but as neighbors, personalities with tempers, affections, and very human flaws. And perhaps that's the secret behind why these stories endure, because they make the divine relatable. The gods are messy, emotional, occasionally ridiculous, but also magnificent. They mirror us, only louder, brighter, and more eternal. In a way, the Greeks weren't worshipping power or perfection. They were worshipping reflection. Let's drift for a moment through those old myths, not as history now, but as symbols. Each god and hero, a flickering candle in humanity's long night. Zeus, for all his thunder and ego, reminds us of ambition, the need to reach higher even when it burns. Hera, forever caught between love and pride, teaches us about the cost of dignity. Athena stands for wisdom earned the hard way, through patience and observation. Aphrodite, for beauty that seduces and destroys in equal measure. Ares, for the chaos we can't quite stop loving. And Dionysus, well, he's there for the chaos we do love, and the consequences we pretend to regret. Then there's Hades, somber, silent, waiting in the dark, reminding us that even the gods couldn't escape the end. Each one is a fragment of what it means to be human, each story a rehearsal for the same struggles we still have. Love and pride, power and loss, the endless tension between what we want and what we should be. And that's why these myths never fade. Because we never change. You can still find traces of them in the strangest places, in the names of planets, all the old gods mapped across the night sky, in the constellations, where Orion still hunts and Cassiopeia still preens. In modern language, narcissism, Herculean, Titanic, panic, all little linguistic fossils from Olympus. Even psychology owes the Greeks a nod. The Oedipus complex, straight out of tragedy, Echo and Narcissus, a study in unrequited love and self-obsession, long before Freud ever took notes. Their stories became the world's vocabulary for the soul. Now, let's float even further, into the quiet, personal side of myth. Because beyond all the wars and betrayals, Greek mythology is also about something tender, the human need to explain ourselves. Before science, we told stories to understand why things hurt, why they changed, why they mattered. If your crops failed, it was Demeter grieving. If the sea turned violent, Poseidon was angry. If you fell in love and it destroyed you, well, that was Aphrodite's doing. It was a way of making the chaos of existence bearable. Because if your suffering had a story, then maybe it had meaning. And maybe that's what myth still gives us, even now. Not answers, but comfort. Picture this. It's night in ancient Greece. The fire crackles. The storyteller begins to speak. His voice is slow, deliberate, a little sad. Around him, people listen. Farmers, sailors, mothers, soldiers. The stars are bright overhead, and the gods feel close. He tells them of heroes who fall, of gods who weep, of lovers who defy death. He speaks of how the sea breathes, how the earth remembers, how every human dream is a spark stolen from divine fire. And as his voice fades into the night, no one moves. Because for a moment, they understand something wordless, that the stories aren't really about the gods at all. They're about us. We created them, yes. But in doing so, they created us back. They gave us language, metaphor, identity. They gave us the courage to imagine, and the humility to know we'd never quite understand everything. Humility to know we'd never quite understand everything. So maybe, in some strange way, Greek mythology didn't end with the fall of Olympus. Maybe it's been whispering in every human dream ever since. Whenever we tell stories about love too big, wars too long, or pride too fatal. And maybe that's where the gods live now. Not in temples or statues, but in our storytelling instinct itself. Every time we spin a tale to make sense of the world, every time we give names to our fears and faces to our hopes, we're keeping Olympus alive. Because myth isn't about truth. It's about meaning, and meaning never dies. It just changes form. Hey there, traveler of late hours. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You've wandered through creation, chaos, war, love, and the slow fading of Olympus itself. But Greek mythology has one last trick left, one last quiet loop in its tapestry, the truth that myths never really end. They circle back endlessly. They return, like tides. So, tonight, let's drift into the soft spiral of eternity, where every ending in Greek mythology is just another beginning wearing a different name. You see, the Greeks had this idea. They called it the anakyklosis of stories. Not in so many words, maybe, but in spirit. Everything repeats. Empires rise, gods fall, mortals forget, and then someone tells the story again, just slightly different. It's how myth works. Zeus dethrones Kronos, who dethroned Uranus, and so on. Each generation rebels, wins, and becomes the very thing it once fought. The universe resets in miniature, over and over. That endless cycle is both tragic and comforting, because even as the old gods fade, something in the human soul keeps resurrecting them, not as religion anymore, but as reflection. We keep retelling their stories because we keep living them. Take Prometheus. He's supposed to be punished forever for giving fire, knowledge, to humanity. But every time someone creates something new, challenges the rules, or pays a price for progress, that story replays. The fire burns again, or take Persephone. Every spring, she rises from the underworld, bringing life with her. The earth blooms, then she fades back down, and the cycle of death and renewal begins again. The Greeks didn't just invent seasons. They invented symbolism, and we still follow it even now. Every New Year's resolution, every heartbreak that turns into healing, every collapse that births something new. It's Persephone, reborn under a different name. Even love stories repeat. Orpheus and Eurydice, the eternal theme of love reaching for the lost, of looking back when we shouldn't. That story has echoed through every romance and tragedy since. It's as if Greek mythology wasn't describing the world, but the human pattern, the rhythm of hope, hubris, and heartbreak. Now, if you zoom out far enough, the whole thing becomes almost cosmic. In Hesiod's version, time begins in chaos, not chaos as in noise, but as in the yawning void, the great nothing that births everything. Out of it came Gaia, Tartarus, Eros, the earth, the underworld, and desire. That's the foundation of existence right there. A place, a depth, and a longing. And if that doesn't sound timeless, I don't know what does. Because if you think about it, every human story starts the same way. From nothing comes place. From place comes desire. From desire comes everything else. Conflict, creation, life, loss, and eventually meaning. That's the secret of Greek mythology. It's not about gods ruling from on high. It's about the shape of existence, how everything begins in chaos and ends in story. When the philosophers of later ages looked back on the myths, some of them realized that the gods were just metaphors for human forces. But what they may not have realized was how beautifully self-aware those metaphors already were. The Greeks weren't naive. They didn't think Zeus literally threw lightning bolts every time they had bad weather. They just understood that stories make the unbearable understandable. The unknown becomes knowable once it has a name and a face. And so, instead of running from their fears, they gave them character arcs. That's what made the Greeks so extraordinary. Not their belief in gods, but their honesty about human nature. They didn't hide their flaws in divine perfection. They exaggerated them into cosmic proportions and said, "Here, this is what we are." And maybe that's why we keep coming back to these myths even now. Because every generation finds itself in them. The scientist who pushes boundaries and pays the price is Prometheus. The artist who loses themselves in their creation is Daedalus. The activist who dares to speak truth to power is Cassandra, cursed to be right and never believed. The dreamer who falls for their own reflection is Narcissus, and anyone who ever loved something they couldn't keep. Well, they've been Orpheus all along. It's not about ancient Greece anymore. It's about the timeless anatomy of being human. The the same raw, restless curiosity that made the Greeks look at the stars and say, "That must be someone's story." Now, here's something quietly poetic. The myths themselves have become immortal in the exact way their gods always wanted to be. Zeus's thunder doesn't crack over Olympus anymore, but his name sparks electricity in our language. Hermes doesn't guide travelers by torchlight, but his winged sandals live on in every symbol of speed and motion. And Aphrodite, she's still everywhere. Every perfume, every painting, every song that sighs about beauty or heartbreak, she's there. They found eternity, just not the kind they expected. So, as we float toward the true end of this mythic odyssey, maybe it's worth remembering that myths aren't about fact. They're about rhythm, the rhythm of existence. Creation, destruction, rebirth. The endless loop of learning and forgetting, loving and losing. The Greeks understood that eternity isn't a straight line. It's a circle. That's why their gods never really leave. They just shift form, waiting to be rediscovered by a new age, a new voice, a new storyteller. Maybe that storyteller is you. Maybe, in some distant future, someone else will retell our stories the same way. A myth about us, the people who thought the gods were gone. And when they do, maybe they'll say, "There once was a time when humans forgot the old ways." But the stories, they never forgot the humans, because myth doesn't belong to the past. It belongs to whoever still dreams. So, if you're listening now, half asleep and floating somewhere between the ancient and the modern, you're part of that same story. A continuation of a thread spun long ago by the fates, still weaving through every dreamer who dares to ask why. So, close your eyes. The fire has gone low. The gods are asleep, their laughter fading into the hills. But the stories, they're still breathing. Maybe, somewhere in your dreams tonight, you'll walk through marble ruins glowing under the moon. Maybe you'll hear the sea, and the faint murmur of an ancient voice saying, "Once upon a time, there was chaos, and out of it came life." And maybe you'll realize that's still true. Good night. You've reached the end of the myth, and the beginning of every story yet to come. Every story yet to come.